Welcome back to the channel. My name is Douglas, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you my 2-year review and thoughts on the M-Audio Hammer 88 Pro. It's hard to believe it's been over 2 years since this controller was released, and let's jump into it and see how it's held up over the last couple of years. So let's jump right into this and talk about first kind of some context on how I use this. So most of the time it sits in my studio. I have used this live a few times, either plugged into my Nord Stage 3, and when I do that, I set the touch to medium. That seems to work the best and be the most in sync with the keys on the Nord Stage 3 compact that I do have. The other way that I've used this live is plugged into my computer, playing virtual instruments. There was one instance where we were playing live and we were down an electric guitar player. A couple of songs we were doing that needed a bit more filled in from the guitar perspective. So I had this plugged in using the virtual instrument electric starburst from Native Instruments, and I kind of filled in that electric guitar. Obviously, it's not something that you would want to solo, but it sounded pretty decent. So there you go, a little bit of how you can use this and leverage this in different situations. Again, sitting in the mix to help to fill things out. I wouldn't do that on a regular basis, but Native Instruments has some pretty good replications of instruments. It's pretty cool what you can do. I don't use this live to play drums because we always have a drummer if we're playing live, but I do use this in the studio here. If I want to play drums, I'll use this, as this is kind of my dedicated controller for my studio desk here, while I do have some other little things and stuff. But this is kind of my main controller for in the studio here. So I'll pull up like the studio drummer from Native Instruments. And you can also use the pads. I find because I started playing drums on the keys, sometimes I feel like I get a little bit more control. Anyway, could spend a lot of time just messing around here, but you get the idea. Use it in different contexts, whether it's in the studio playing drums, live playing piano, or some other things. I find that virtual instruments, there's a bit more flexibility sometimes. I'll find that some sounds I like, some big pad sounds and stuff, I'll use virtual instruments for, and I'll just plug this through. But in the studio, it sits as kind of my main control surface. You can arm and unarm tracks with these modes here. This actually works really well. So again, context perspective, I use Pro Tools to record, and I find that this has always worked really perfectly. The Oxygen Pro line and the Hammer 88 Pro, they all work really well with Pro Tools. I haven't used these with other DAWs, but in Pro Tools, the start, stop, arm for record, the transport buttons, all of these modes to either mute, select, so you can switch between the different modes here. And these 8 buttons underneath these first 8 faders here become ways for your first 8 tracks. And as you switch banks, you can actually move through the different tracks. And you can either mute them, solo them, arm them for record, select them. So it's a really quick way to kind of manipulate your tracks without having to go in and use your mouse at all. Again, play, stop, record. You can switch between a couple of different views in Pro Tools with these buttons on the side here between your mix view and your track view. So really cool. I love the way and how it's integrated into Pro Tools without needing to do any sort of customization or setup. The knobs here, again, these control the volumes and then the pans as well of your tracks. So really well implemented, at least for Pro Tools. I know people have had issues with some other DAWs, but I can't really speak to those because my primary DAW is Pro Tools. Now let's talk about build quality and the controls and kind of the hardware aspect of this, because I know there's been some issues people have had with clicky keys, things like that. I've had no issues with these, and I actually love the way they feel. To me, it feels very similar to a grand piano, and I love that. They're not wooden or anything, but the weighting is really nice, and you can go into the menu by holding Shift and tapping on your Mode Global button. You can go over, scroll to the keyboard sensitivity, and depending on what I'm playing with, in the case of the piano plugin Hammer and Waves, I'll put it on linear for that, and then for the Nord Stage 3 Compact, if I'm just MIDIing this in and controlling that keyboard, I'll put it on medium. So depending on what I'm playing, I'll kind of adjust the keyboard sensitivity. And I have a pretty hard playing style, so sometimes I tend to go towards medium instead of linear because linear is just too sharp. I hammer the keys pretty hard, and so sometimes I need to scale back that keyboard sensitivity. But overall, I've had the adjustments and the controls I need to, and I've had no issues, again, with the keybed. Really love the way it feels. I honestly like the way the controls feel. Pitch and mod wheel have held up really well. All of the buttons have held up well. A little bit of paint coming off of the knobs here, mostly the ones that I use all the time. But everything, I mean, faders have a little wiggle in them, but I believe that's kind of how they were to start. Pads, let's talk about these for a second. This is the only issue or area I've had a problem with is this top row works fine. I cannot get anything now to come out of these bottom rows. And this just started happening recently. And I'll be honest, I haven't submitted a support case or anything like that, so I'll be chasing that down. But this bottom row, if I go into like my edit menu, the top row here actually recognizes the pads, but the bottom row, nothing comes up on the screen. I can see it if I go into the software preset editor. I can see them there, and I can send the preset down with the notes and stuff, but these don't trigger anything. And I cannot figure out for the life of me why they don't work. It's quite odd. So this top row works. I've got 8 that work, and I can cycle through those banks, but the bottom row doesn't do anything for me. So kind of unfortunate there. The pads themselves, they're nice and thick and big, but I find, like in the case of playing those drums, that I don't know, I can't quite get the drum roll sensitivity that I would like out of them. So to me, it's kind of easier to use the keyboard in that sense. But again, the pads overall feel really good if this bottom row would work for me. They did originally. It's just somewhere along the line they stopped working, and I didn't realize it till a little bit ago. But anyway, pads, they do have a nice thick feel. They're a lot better than, let's say, the Oxygen Pro Mini. The thickness of the pads themselves is much thinner on the Mini than they are. And so you get a lot more, just feels like nice and beefy here. So that's good. All the other controls I've had no issues with. Just this bottom row of pads here seems to be the thing that has bugged mine. The inputs and outputs on the back, there's the sustain pedal, MIDI, all of those types of inputs, expression pedal. I've had no issues with those. Again, I'm not really swapping this in and out, traveling with it a lot. I'd say probably on one hand, I can count the times I've gigged with this. So it's not like I've been beating this up. It's been sitting in the studio a lot of the time. Now, one other thing I wanted to talk about is the M Audio preset editor that comes with the Hammer 88 Pro. I love, that's a great way. I would say from a customization standpoint, this controller is really easy. You can either hold shift and go into your either DAW or preset edit modes, and then just tap and change the controls right from this little screen. So if you don't have a computer, let's say this is an instance where I've got it plugged into my Nord Stage 3 compact. So I don't actually have anything plugged in on the computer. I'll use a little power USB block, and I'll plug the USB and power it that way, and then just plug it via the 5-pin MIDI into my Nord Stage 3. And as I'm playing, if I need to tweak something, I can do that right from the screen without needing to use a computer. So it's great if I'm on stage and I actually want to change one of the controls and what it's doing, then I can do that right from the screen. Or if I am connected to the computer, the preset editor that comes with this for free is excellent. It has all the controls, these buttons here. You're able to customize pretty much anything, and it's really easy to retrieve presets from the controller, edit them, send them back to the controller. You can also save those presets to your computer. And so it's a really good way to back up what you've customized and just kind of really well thought out. And it works really well. Comparatively, the Oxygen Pro Mini, which I have right here, I've been less than enamored with the preset editor. There's some holes and gaps in it in that you can't access some of the banks of pads and stuff. But on the Hammer 88 Pro, executed very well. And again, I love this controller. I'm excited to start comparing it. I've got a couple of 88 key keyboards coming that'll actually be able to compare the weight of this, which is graded Hammer Action, which means heavier on the bottom, lighter on the top, just like an actual Grand. Beautiful. Now, you might be wondering, what sound am I using for this? So this is the Hammer and Waves piano, and let me pull that up so I can actually get you the preset. It's Sensitivo in the Modern Grand. This is a Hammer and Waves acoustic, and I've also added a delay from Native Instruments called Replica and the Soft Clouds preset on there, and I just have that dialed way back. Gives it that nice cloud reverb, so to speak, there. This is an awesome piano plugin, by the way. I'm going to be doing a couple videos on this real soon, so stay tuned for those. And again, I have some other 88 key keyboards coming. I'll be able to kind of compare the weighted action from those to this to give you a better idea of how this compares to some of the other actions out there. So if you have any questions around the build quality, around the controller itself, I have some other videos. I didn't dive too much in this video into the details of how to customize controls and things like that, because I already have quite a few videos about this controller on my channel, as well as the whole Oxygen Pro line. So pretty much the functionality from the Oxygen Pro 25 and the Mini, a lot of that is exactly the same on the Hammer 88 Pro. So if you're wondering how the arpeggiator works or things like that, go check out the videos on my channel. Hopefully those will get you up and running on this controller. And if you want to stay up to date on the channel, feel free to hit that subscribe button. We've got some new keyboards coming into the studio here soon, as well as demoing some of the virtual instruments that I've got. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. Stay inspired and keep making that music.